Well, let's see. Okay. So, what's up, everyone? Last week, I met up with our friend Charlie Merrill, who is my personal physical therapist. And we decided we kind of had a little conversation to kind of open up what would be a cool topic, and something that I've been interested in doing for a little while kind of came into mind, and that was talking about orthotics. If you haven't already realized, I built a new shelf. Pretty neat. Can't really see. Let's see if we can. Hanging from the ceiling, as you can see. It's a textured ceiling, and you can't really use a stud finder on a textured ceiling super well. So we ended up just like drilling into the ceiling a bunch. Sorry if my landlord's listening. There's no way he is. But I digress. This is gonna be a two-part video. So this one is gonna mostly just be a conversation between Charlie and I. What we tried to do is just really speak objectively about orthotics, what they are, why people use them, why some people need them, why some people don't. Next week or so, you'll see a part 2 come up. That's gonna be a little bit more of like an action plan if you're someone that's like looking to get out of an orthotic, or you're trying to maybe avoid going in one in the first place. So let's go ahead and jump into the discussion that Charlie and I had. Hey guys, I'm joined today by Charlie Merrill, and we are going to be talking about the hot topic of orthotics. So we're going to talk about lots of different things, everything that you need to know if you're maybe thinking about getting a pair, or if you already have a pair, and everything in between. Shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, man, what's the deal with orthotics?
So I have an interesting history with orthotics because I used to make custom orthotics where I'd plaster cast people's feet and evaluate them from head to toe to make them a custom prescription that I hoped was going to help their plantar fasciitis or their knee pain. And while it helped some people, I started to learn that not everybody needed them. And in fact, people would continue to wear them even after they were healed without really knowing why. So my philosophy with how I treat some runners has changed. And while I still make them now and then for the outliers, I find that most people can do without them and can get stronger in ways that'll actually ultimately make them better runners, have stronger feet, and be more biomechanically sound. So the industry's huge. A lot of the runners I see that come into the clinic are wearing orthotics. A lot of them don't really know why. They have an attachment to them or an assumption that they still need to use them because that's why they're staying healthy. And I like to try to help them understand that story and dispel that myth for them.
Got it. Okay, well, there's a lot of different types of people and runners listening to this video, so why don't we try to break down kind of the good, the bad, the ugly sides of orthotics and just kind of have a conversation on it. How's
Sounds
that sound?
great.
Sweet.
Let's do it.
All right, so just as a quick disclaimer, this is a conversation about pretty much everything about orthotics. It's not why someone's right, why someone's wrong. We're gonna try and just look at this very objectively so that we can kind of figure out a lot of stuff, because I think a lot of people out there just wear orthotics and don't really know why. Mm-hmm. So let's start with maybe the person who needs orthotics. So like, when are orthotics most appropriate?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of reasons why orthotics are appropriate. The main reason that orthotics were developed originally, historically, was to help people that had structural deformities of their feet. And that means that as we're growing up through adolescence, our feet don't fully unrotate from our kid feet to our adult feet and end up in neutral. And the more far away you are from neutral structurally, in your bones, the way they developed, the more an orthotic will help to bring the ground up to your feet to help it function well. Those are rare outliers.
Okay, so that's someone that's like born with some sort of issue with their foot, right? on that same note, is that the fix for that person, or is there stuff that person can be doing as well?
For a lot of those people, that orthotic is going to be really helpful to them to help maintain their alignment, whether they're a runner or just going through their day-to-day life. So they might need that orthotic for the long term.
Okay, so how about most people that wear orthotics? Is that most people?
It is not most people. I'd say those are definitely the outliers at the two ends of the continuum.
Got it.
The rest of us are somewhere in between, and it doesn't mean some of those people don't also need some support, but more often than not, there's another way to solve those people's problems.
Yeah. Is there maybe the normal person out there that got an orthotic initially to like help with a healing process or something? Is that another appropriate use?
So that's the other situation where I think orthotics are really helpful. If you've had some trauma where you've had an injury to your foot that changed it structurally, you might need an orthotic. Or if you have an injury that was an overuse injury where you're trying to support the healing of the tissue, an orthotic in the short term, just like wearing a neck brace after a car accident or a brace on your wrist while it's healing, an orthotic can be really helpful in those cases.
Got it. So that's someone that, goes into a podiatrist. The podiatrist, let's say podiatrist, they see something that needs some help, maybe to start the conversation of healing and allow it to kind of get the activation energy that it needs to heal. And that is super important for some people that are coming out of an injury.
Yeah.
But the thing that we tend to see is that people get over that hump of getting the help that they need from an orthotic, and then they just kind of stay there, right?
Yeah, I think people feel like they maybe stay on the edge of flaring that injury back up. And if you've only used an orthotic and haven't addressed some of the other biomechanical weaknesses, stability and mobility, then the orthotic may be what's keeping you together.
Got it.
If you can address those other things, the orthotic becomes unnecessary.
Yeah. How many of you out there have had the same orthotics for like 6 years? I bet a lot of you.
You need to at least get the top cover replaced because it's probably pretty smelly at this
Smells
point.
pretty bad. Okay, so those are the two main places. If you've been born with some sort of deformity to your feet or your kind of lower leg, and then also the person that is coming back from an injury just needs a little help to kind of start the healing process. Those are the two kind of huge places that they're helpful, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, let's segue to when they're not most appropriate. Okay, so that was the good. How about the bad?
Oh, we're going to make it dualistic, huh?
Yeah, so the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
I get it.
Okay,
yeah.
so the bad. Not so much bad, but when are orthotics maybe not super appropriate? Or were they abused?
Abused.
Rather.
Yeah. It's a good question.
What's the main place?
There are a lot of people, as we talked about, that have orthotics in their shoes that don't really know why.
Yeah.
And those people are mostly in the middle of the spectrum. And it may not be doing any harm directly that you can tell, but really at the end of the day, because your problem is adaptive, because you maybe aren't quite as strong in your feet and lower legs as you need to be, or you're not quite as flexible in your ankles and feet as you need to be, you're just putting a Band-Aid on those issues instead of addressing them.
So this could also be someone that originally got an orthotic because they had some weird knee pain, or their friend wears them, and they were like, "You got to wear orthotics because that's just what we do."
Right. Yeah. Maybe it'll help you run more miles, or maybe it'll actually put your foot in a better position. And really, I think what's important to understand is that we have muscles and ligaments in our lower legs and feet that already do that job.
Right.
And so if we add an orthotic to the system, we're reducing the demand on our natural body's ability to naturally do that.
So it's not technically bad to wear one if you don't need one. It's just not really going to strengthen your foot the way that it probably needs to support all the miles and whatnot that you're going to subject it to, right?
Yeah, and in reality, some of the athletes that have the strongest feet are those that go barefoot most of the time. These are martial artists and dancers and people that do yoga. So,
sumo wrestlers?
Sumo wrestlers, maybe. Going barefoot is actually really therapeutic for our feet in many ways. Okay,
so it might not be bad to always wear them, but this is kind of the natural segue and the dovetail of this conversation is okay, so how how do I know if I'm that person? How do I know that if I don't take the orthotic away, I'm just going to immediately re-injure myself like I did before or something like that? So like for that person that might be thinking that, like what's the best kind of approach in terms of making the next step with the orthotic if you want to start strengthening or whatnot?
I think the videos that the Run Experience makes are a really great starting point because they cover a lot of these issues, these adaptive issues that get people into trouble. Going to see a podiatrist or a physical therapist with a balanced perspective on orthotics. This is not someone who says, I put orthotics in 95% of my clients' shoes, right? This is someone that has a real balanced perspective on when they're appropriate. That's a good starting point to understand if you're an outlier, one of those people that needs them.
Could you just go barefoot more?
Or when you're could you just go from one extreme to the other? You could, but
how about just around the house?
Probably better just to start around the house. And I have a protocol for weaning people out of orthotics over time so that it's safe and people can understand how their body's responding to it while they're working on some of these mobility and stability issues.
Got it. Okay. So that was the bad. Should we do the ugly?
Let's talk about the ugly just because it's fun.
Okay.
You just start talking.
Well.
Oh, we're rolling? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so the ugly of orthotics. What is specifically the ugly of orthotics?
Well, orthotics are designed to change the way your foot moves. And that means that it prevents your foot from absorbing shock. And it means that it puts it in a position that maybe doesn't allow it to adapt to the ground as well. And so for a lot of us, it may not be doing any harm, but for some of us, it may actually be changing our biomechanics in a negative way.
Got it.
That leads to more problems.
So let's say I have like a moderately healthy foot, and then I push an orthotic into it. My body's going to start like adapting around it, and then it's going to actually lead it down a path of not being able to really support itself. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the foot will get weak.
Yeah.
It might get stiff.
So what happens to those people?
It's a good question. Those people will often start getting problems in other places, their knees, their hips, their low back. It's changing how much shock they can absorb through their foot, and it can actually make them less efficient. There's some research showing that they store and release less energy from the ground, so they're less efficient.
That makes sense.
And it can even lead to things like ankle sprains, because when you make a custom orthotic, you're changing the way the foot operates by canting or by putting a wedge under either the heel or the forefoot. And that's going to tend to put people more at a position where they're going to roll their ankle to the outside. Very common in trail runners, especially if you combine an orthotic with a motion control shoe, which is double.
Who's that?
Double bad, double ugly.
Okay, so the main kind of takeaway from the ugly is that, you know, you end up hurting yourself by getting an orthotic.
And by staying in an orthotic. Yeah, I mean, you would never like leave a neck brace on after your car accident for the rest of your life. Eventually you want to
Or would you?
Eventually you want to get that thing off and get your neck moving again and get it strong again.
Right.
And the foot's the same situation for most of us.
Got it. That is ugly. All right, so it's not the end of the world if you have orthotics or have been in them for a long time. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah, it's an opportunity to reconsider whether that's really necessary.
Absolutely. So today we just talked about the quote-unquote good, bad, and the ugly of orthotics, kind of really just brush border kind of a discussion around what orthotics are, why you might need them if you're someone that's born with some sort of foot issue. That was the good implication of an orthotic. The bad implication was, remind me again?
The bad implication is when you have other issues that you could be treating to make yourself healthier that you're avoiding by using an orthotic.
And then the ugly was that if you just shoved an orthotic in your shoe because once upon a time someone told you to, and now your foot is actually worse off because of it.
Weaker
is kind of a big one there. So good, bad, and the ugly. Next week, we're we're gonna get back together and we're gonna talk about some mobility, strength, stability exercises that we can start to implement to actually really streamline the process. If you want to either wean yourself away from the orthotics you're currently in, or you're like considering getting orthotics and you want to find some alternative things to do to
Save yourself $800.
Yeah, it's also cheaper to just learn how to do a couple things than to go into the doctor.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
Yeah.
Charlie's a PT and he's telling you not to go to him.
Basically. Yeah. It's a terrible business model.
Terrible business model. Okay, guys, so yep, if you like this video, let us know by clicking the like button below. If you have any questions or want to add your own input and your own story about your orthotic journey, do it in the comments. We love to hear that stuff. If you have not already done so, we are dropping a ton of content on this channel, so be sure to subscribe as well. So we'll catch you next week for part 2.
Where we'll talk about my favorite shoe.
The sandal.
The $10 flip-flop.
And yeah, we'll catch you guys then.